Welcome to The Audible, presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel, joined as always by Bruce Feldman and Ralph Russo. Don't forget, every episode of the show is now available on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/@audibleshow. That's @audibleshow. You can join us live on Sundays for this is coming up will be week 5 already. Week 5 reaction show Sundays, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 Pacific, as we break down the weekend's games. Today, guys, we have a big weekend of games coming up here with Oregon, Penn State, Georgia, Alabama, and others. We're going to pick those games. We're going to pick some upsets. We're going to look at the AP rankings. We're going to pick one team each that we believe in and that we don't believe in. But first, a little bit look back at something from the weekend, guys. That blown call in the Oklahoma-Auburn game when Oklahoma tried to sneak their receiver down the sideline when everybody thought he was subbing out. We're a couple of days after that now, and there's some, and Bruce, you might be able to speak to this, but like people are ticked about this.
They are. I think there's some folks inside the SEC coaching world who feel like that was crossing a line in terms of the deception. And for a while, it looked like Oklahoma was quote unquote going to get away with it. Now, I think there's some things that don't add up right now because there was a report out of Oklahoma that the Sooners had gone to the officiating crew, or somebody did, and maybe said, hey, tipped them off. And I know this from talking to some coaches and some other examples, if they have a certain kind of play, if it's a gadget play or a trick play, maybe they'll tell the officiating crew ahead of time, just, hey, be on the lookout. So you're kind of prepared for it, not necessarily caught off guard by it, and don't react the wrong way to it. So this, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the SEC decides to say or not say coming forward, because there's just a lot of angst within the conference, it feels like, about it. And also, it wasn't like this helped decide the game. It was gave them a touchdown. It was decided by a touchdown. Who knows how this plays out in the playoff race if it does get to that. But it's definitely an interesting situation to see.
Well, I mean, listen, I understand that coaches like to complain. And I understand that. I can understand if you're a coach, you may look side-eye towards Oklahoma and think, man, why'd you try to get away with that? You know the rules, you tried to get away with that. I'm not buying that as a problem, so to speak. This is an officiating issue. And you're right. I think it was, in fact, I'm pretty sure Ben Arbuckle tried to do some of my own reporting on this, but we didn't have a whole lot of time before the show started here. But I'm pretty sure Ben Arbuckle was quoted also as saying that like this was something we kind of gave a heads up to the officials, just for people to understand. Before a football game, the officials meet with the teams just to sort of go over stuff, right? Just to go over stuff. And as Bruce said, like it's not uncommon for a team to say, for a coach to say, hey, like, we have this play that might get you confused. Maybe we're going to switch a number on a player or so. It's legal. We believe it to be legal, but we want to point it out to you just so you understand how to officiate it when it's coming. If they did that, and again, that's pretty common practice, and the officials were like, yep, that's cool, go right ahead. That's an officiating problem, not necessarily a coaches trying to get away with one problem, because I suggest that coaches are always trying to figure out where the loophole is in the rule and whether they have a play that can match it to confuse their opponents. So I understand coaches like to complain, but again, like the idea that Oklahoma tried to get away with one, I'm a little skeptical of that. Because I think everybody tries to get away with one, just to set that
well,
straight.
It is funny which ethical things coaches decide to take a stand on and which not, right? Like the Michigan sign stealing stuff was a crime against humanity. Apparently this is too. But like in the meantime, they're probably breaking every tampering and recruiting rule under the sun. But this is what I find so weird about it, guys, and we can move on. This does not strike me as some sort of there's a lot of rules in the rule book that have a gray area. This one seems like it absolutely does not. The exact language is no simulated replacements or substitutions may be used to confuse opponents. No tactic associated with substitutes or the substitution process may be used to confuse opponents. This includes any hideout tactic with or without substitution. I mean, it doesn't get much clearer than that. But Oklahoma apparently felt like they were within the rules. They practiced the play all week. Molly McGrath, the sideline reporter, came back from a commercial and was like, "Oh, I spoke to the official. They said it was fine." I'm paraphrasing there. That rule I just read, right? It's describes the exact play they did.
Something's not adding up here.
No.
Oklahoma
thought it was legal.
You,
apparently
Stu.
The head official thought it was legal.
All right, disagree with Stu.
Yeah, I disagree with you, Stu, only in this. I think that, no, those are the types of rules that always require a certain amount of judgment and explanation that happens before a season, right? How are we going to enforce this rule? What qualifies as hiding out? What qualifies as, hey, a guy just walking to his where he's positioned, he has a very wide split. So there is some gray area here. The point of the matter is, though, it's a gray area that needs to be figured out by officials, among officials, before the season starts, and certainly before a game starts, and not necessarily during a game.
Quick question, Stu. Are you the one who approves Ralph's expenses? Because if you do, I think you're going to have to look at really closely, because I see where Ralph's mind is. So.
What else could the word hideout mean? They're not going to construct a tent and hide the guy inside of it. This is
that would be cool.
In that dark room in Brooklyn, Ralph.
This is as close to a hideout as you can get. This is not just my opinion. I did, like you said, we tried to do a little quick reporting. I spoke to a pretty high up person in the officiating community who said that my interpretation was right. That rule was very clear. So it seems like the crew screwed up, and so, if you remember the Georgia-Texas fiasco last year, they pulled that crew the next week, but never announced it. And then when we suggested that they had, because, they didn't work any other game that week, it was like, no, that's normal. Sometimes crews just take a week off. So I don't expect them to publicly punish this crew. But we will look closely at the game books next week to see if anybody is mysteriously missing. All right. We usually in this Tuesday episode give Ralph grief about his AP ballot.
I mean, you still can. We can if we want. I
don't think there are any huge controversies in it, but I do think 4 weeks into the season, we can look at these polls now. There's not a huge amount of data yet, but there's enough to start to say I know this team is ranked this high, but I don't believe that's what's going to happen from here, or vice versa. This team is ranked low. Maybe they haven't actually earned it yet, but I could see them finishing much higher. So we're going to go around the group. Each person picks one in each category, and I will start with you, Bruce.
I'm going to start with the team that I am definitely buying after last weekend was Indiana. We've seen a bunch of teams that have had really not played anybody yet in September. USC is high on that list right now. And I'm not saying they don't belong in the top 25, but it's hard to get too much of a read when your opponents are pretty inferior. Michigan State was the closest one to them, but it was a way late game by their time. And, the game was pretty close for a little while, and then they pulled away. But Indiana has dominated everybody, including the way they blew Illinois off the field the other day was impressive. Whether you think Illinois is a legit top 10 team or not, Illinois is still a pretty good team that's very experienced, in the top 25, legit, and they crushed them. And I think Fernando Mendoza is playing at such an incredibly high level right now. To me, that's the difference in where they were last year. I'm not saying they didn't get good quarterback play, but I just feel like, I think he was 21 of 23, 2 incompletions, 5 touchdown passes. You don't usually see a stat line from that in anybody who played against another top 25 opponent. On the flip side, the team I'm most leery of that's high in the poll and certainly high in Ralph's ballot this week is Oklahoma. Look, I'm a big believer in John Mateer, and the offense is much improved, and they're really good on defense. Legit, 10 sacks they got after Auburn. But the part I'm a little hesitant on is that was a tight game. Whether that play should have counted or not. I mean, Auburn played them pretty even. I don't think Auburn's like a top 5, top 10 team. And then what gives me probably the most concern is the style of play. Mateer is a physical quarterback. He runs it a lot. I feel like they really are going to need to lean on him with his legs. And what I would be most worried about is, can he hold up against the schedule they're going to play? They're going to get Texas soon. Then they have another opponent. I think it's South Carolina. And then after that, it's like the last 5 games are all against ranked teams, all against heavyweight opponents. To me, I think being a running quarterback in the SEC is much different than being a running quarterback in some version of the Pac-12 or even the Big 12. I just think you're getting hit by a lot bigger, a lot more explosive athletes. And that would concern me. How well will he hold up throughout the course of the year? That's why I was like, all right, I don't want to pump the brakes too much on Oklahoma. I think they've earned, to be back in the top 25, even the top 15. But that's one where I'm like, I wonder how they're going to hold up once they get to this gauntlet of a schedule that they have coming up.
Right. Oklahoma is number 7 this week. And I was even out ahead of that at I have the Sooners at number 3. Now, I also started with the Sooners a lot higher. I was higher on them at the beginning of the season. So they've progressed from number 12 in the preseason to number 3 for me, while they progressed from like 18 to 7, I think was their progression in the actual poll. I'm with you though. Like, yeah, you'll notice a theme on this podcast is I tend to cover all bases I hedge my bets a lot. So I'm bullish on the Sooners this week because they have 2 big wins, right? They beat Michigan and Auburn. But I also find myself thinking, like, am I going to do with Oklahoma what I was doing with LSU, which is have some buyer's remorse in a week or two when I'm looking at them thinking like, that's the number 3 team in the country? I'm not really sure about that because I put myself in that position with LSU at some point when I moved them up to number 2 after the Tigers beat Clemson to start the season. So I'm with you on that point when it comes to Oklahoma. Are they this good? I got you on there, Bruce. On the positive side, where I'm starting to realize, I might have to buy into this team. Well, I got 2. I'll go with the one that we were talking about in our pre-show meeting because I don't want to trip up Stu, and that's Ole Miss. I had them way down on my rankings to start the year, about 20 something. Was really leery about all they lost on both sides of the ball, but Lane Kiffin is really showing again that like, dude knows offense. No matter what quarterback's in there, they have lit it up. They haven't played the toughest of competition, but they haven't played nobody, right? Between Kentucky, Arkansas, and Tulane, that's all enough to get some idea about what Ole Miss is going to be. I still have some trepidation about what they lost on the defensive side, but I had them up to I think they're around where they are this week. In like the low teens is where I had them. I think that's where they're actually ranked, is in the low teens. And I think that they are looking more and more, the Rebels are looking more and more like a fairly serious SEC and playoff contender. Maybe we'll find out this week when they play LSU that no, that is wrong. What you got, Stu?
Okay, so I'm as bullish, if not more so, on Indiana as Bruce is, but I will try to be a little bit original and offer somebody else, and that's the team right behind them at number 12, Texas Tech. I did listen to the rest of the podcast that I had to bail on Sunday with you guys, and I actually gave you a little grief for like Bruce went straight to like, do you think Texas Tech can make a playoff run, rather than like, can they actually win the Big 12, which they've never done. But one thing I like to do on Sunday nights is go back. I got every game's recorded on YouTube TV. Go back and watch the key plays, either from games that I didn't see at all or ones that I just kind of want to like refresh my memory. And man, Texas Tech defense, the plays they made over and over and over again, I do really think it's not hyperbole, reaffirmed that, yeah, they went out and bought themselves a championship caliber team.
A national championship caliber team?
No, a Big 12 championship caliber
There's
team
a big difference there, Stu.
That I think can, yes, to your point, I think can win some games in the playoff. Now, with one caveat, We don't know the quarterback injury situation yet. If they do have to go with Will Hammond, he came in and he was great, but it was one game, right? It was one game. It was actually one half sample size. So,
one half on the road against a very talented defense and a very well coached defense, though.
Right.
If there was one situation that I would be like, oh, that would carry the most weight, there's no other place in the Big 12 against no other defense, against no other DC that I'd be like, ooh, that's about as tough as it could get. And I feel like that was the situation. I'm not saying that he just went into Georgia in Athens at a night game against the Dogs. But in the Big 12, that's probably as daunting a situation as you could get, I think.
Yeah, and regardless, like the takeaway, and by the way, isn't it crazy to talk about Texas Tech and its defense? I mean, what is it? It's been 15 years of whether it was Cliff Kingsbury, whether it was more recently, great offense, great quarterback, great receivers, no defense. Can't recruit defensive players to Texas Tech. Well, it turns out you can if you have an oil billionaire. So also Jacoby Williams really stood out in that game. Like that guy can fly. So that's now for the team I'm going to punt on a little bit. Maybe that's being too harsh. Miami should absolutely be ranked number 2 in the country. We are not sitting here talking about, to be clear, this team's overrated. You shouldn't have them so high, Ralph, blah, blah, blah.
But yet,
when I see them sitting there right behind Ohio State, right ahead of Penn State, I think to myself, do I actually believe Mario Cristobal can coach a team to the national title game, which is what you're saying if they're one of the top 2 teams? And my answer is no. And I feel bad saying that. He's a good guy. He was on our show last year, when they, campaigning for them when it looked like they were going to get left out, which they did. But there's nothing about his pretty considerable at this point head coaching resume to believe they are going to, even if you think they have this kind of potential in them, that they're not going to stumble at some point. Also, I would say the same thing about Carson Beck. He looks really good so far. He has had some evidence in the past to suggest that might not hold up for a full season. So I do think they'll make the playoff. I do not think I don't think they're going to be one of the last 4 standing.
I want to give a bonus team because I know this fan base always tends to be like, hey, what about us? I don't even know if Missouri has actually gotten all of its SEC credentials yet. Did they even, I still wonder if the SEC truly acknowledges Missouri as being part of the conference. I think when they're doing well, yes. And when they're not, I think everybody kind of looks like, hey man, you're only here because of Texas A&M. That's not fair. And it's especially not fair this year. And I am one of the people who is always seems to be a little skeptical of Missouri. That team looks pretty good to me. I think Eli's got something going on there. So again, just a quick shout out for Missouri. I find myself buying into them more and more every week.
Do you buy into them more than you buy into Ole Miss? I guess you probably don't if you've said Ole Miss first. But they have, they beat Kansas. Kansas is actually pretty good. Now it was home, but I think Kansas is not a cakewalk.
Again, I found myself. We talked about Ole Miss initially, so I kind of felt I needed to commit to where we were going there. I didn't want to possibly undercut Stu on something he might have wanted to say. But let's say it's a tie. Let's say it's a tie. I find myself with both Ole Miss and Missouri thinking I think much more highly of this team now than I did coming into the season. And I actually think Missouri might be a little more balanced.
Yeah, Hardy's been a terrific running back. The interesting thing is, both teams have had quarterback issues. Now, Bo Perbula, I think we expected probably to be more the guy than Sam Horn, but Trinidad Chambliss has played really well in place of Austin Simmons. I mean, he's the Federal State quarterback who's been really good, and it kind of shows that Lane and Charlie Jr. over there definitely have a good feel for the pulse of what works on offense.
Coming up after the break, we are going to give our picks for the big games of the weekend. Since we're going to be doing picks, I will use your Ole Miss conversation to transition into them. One of the 3 big games this week is number 4 LSU facing number 13 Ole Miss. Here's a situation where Vegas does not think the same way necessarily as the pollsters, because that number 4 LSU team is a 2.5-point underdog at Ole Miss. So you guys surprised by that?
I am. Yeah, I am. But, well, pause. I am, but as someone who looks at a lot of power rankings, which usually give you a pretty good idea of where things stand when it comes to what's going on in Vegas, like, I guess I wasn't totally surprised. I guess what's surprising to me is just how well Ole Miss is stacking up in those power rankings compared to LSU, which has had offensive deficiencies and hasn't been nearly as efficient on that side of the ball. And usually that is a red flag. I mean, we've talked about it, right? I was the one who pushed back against you guys when you were talking about like Ole Miss looks like an SEC contender and a playoff contender. And I'm like, well, got to do something about that offense. Like, I know Brian Kelly doesn't want to be asked about it, but that is that is not looking great right now. And I will say this, I think we'll learn a lot because Ole Miss's defense hasn't been quite as stingy. So if you can't get it moving against the Rebels, who can you get it moving against, Alabama and some of the other teams that are on the Tiger schedule later in the year?
I'm a big believer. I love the analytics like you do, but there's some teams that just the analytics just love every year. And Ole Miss is one of them. And I think it's because Lane's teams are like merciless against the teams they should beat. And
there
then
is
they get to those
to be said for that, yes.
couple of games where they just absolutely are not. Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, LSU has one really good road win already this year. And obviously it was at Clemson, which, as we talked about on Sunday, we're not sure that road win doesn't look quite as impressive as Clemson has looked to be a fraud this year. I'm surprised the spread wasn't the other way. I thought that LSU would have been maybe a slim favorite, not a slim underdog. But what I love about this matchup is you have a good coach rivalry there between Lane Kiffin and the coach he seems to love to kind of dig at on social media, especially, in Brian Kelly. If you're LSU, and I think you have, I'm not saying this is a lightweight matchup because they're an underdog and Ole Miss is obviously pretty highly ranked. I know they're going to take it seriously, but this is the matchup where I think if you're an LSU fan going into the year, I don't think you're most worried about this because all the guys Ole Miss lost. I know Brian Kelly and Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator, are on high alert for this game. My gut is, Garrett Nussmeier may not be 100%. I think they were hoping to get him through next week with the bye week before the schedule gets even harder. I'm going to lean towards LSU here. I just feel like they have more proven guys on defense. I like the secondary. I think it's much improved. I think you got some experienced guys who came back. If you get all the Weekses playing healthy, which it sounds like it's trending in the right direction, I think they're a mature enough team that they can go win in Oxford.
All right, I'll go against you there. I'll take the Rebels, give up them points. As well as LSU's defense has played, they haven't played very live offenses, as we were noticing, right? Florida has been a bit of a dysfunctional mess. Clemson has been pretty much the same for the first 4 weeks. So that LSU defense has built up some numbers against some teams that are not nearly as highly functional and operational as a Lane Kiffin offense.
Stu, break the tie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Rebels, which is not something I would have said a week ago, I don't think. But two things happened. The Clemson continued downfall, implosion, whatever you want to call it, does call into question, like you said with Mike Hill last week, right? I said this as a voter, like, was that as big a win for LSU as I necessarily thought, right? But I thought, Ole Miss, like, I don't think we think Arkansas is that great, so we didn't read much into that, or certainly Kentucky. I actually think the way they obliterated Tulane last week might have been their best statement so far, and in particular, 45-10. Like, we all think, we all thought Jake Retzloff was pretty good. 5 of 17 for 56 yards.
I think he was 0 for 9 to start the game. There might have been a drop or two in there, but 0 for 9. Like, I think what was the difference there was they couldn't pass protect against. I mean, he was under, like, there was no time. There was a bunch of times where I think he was just dumping the ball rather than throw a pick.
Yeah.
I think the pressure, look, credit to Pete Golding. He was a former Nick Saban DC. I think he's doing a pretty good job there. I'm interested to see how that holds up against LSU. We've talked about it. 4 new starters on the O-line. You do have an experienced quarterback. They don't love to run the football, even if they can do it a little bit. To me, that's where the game is going to be won. Like, how well can they protect Nussmeier? And because that's something Tulane couldn't do last week.
Give me Ole Miss and the 2.5. Big game in Happy Valley this weekend. The whiteout. I mean, frankly, they couldn't have asked for a better. I know they were ticked last year that the Washington game ended up being their whiteout, but they couldn't ask for a better one this week. Number 3. What are they now?
3.
Penn State. 3.
Number 3, Penn State.
Right, because Miami. Number 3, Penn State going to Oregon. Number 6, Oregon. Sorry, I botched this completely. Going to number 3, Penn State. That one is a Penn State at home 3.5 point favorite. Let's start with Ralph.
All right. So I think before the season, I would have picked Penn State to win this game. You'll notice one of the consistent things with me is I tend to think in college football, offense tends to win. I tend to go with the better and more functional offense. Not all the time. Occasionally you run into 2020, 2021, 2022, 2021 Georgia, where, the defense is so good it tips the scales. But generally speaking, offense wins championships, and the more functional offense usually is where I'll go. And I think the more functional offense, the offense that has been functioning at a higher rate, has been Oregon so far. I am going to go with the Ducks. I think Penn State's like a 2-point favorite or a 1.5 or 2-point favorite there, according to our friends at BetMGM, or at least it opened that. I wouldn't be surprised if it swung the other way.
It is 3.
If I'm getting 3 points with Oregon, I know it's on the road in the whiteout. I have covered whiteouts. I will be covering this whiteout. It is one of the best settings in sports. Forget college football, forget college sports. I think it is one of the best settings in all of sports. It is pretty wild. And I've been there for more than a couple that Ohio State ruined. And I know the expectations, there'll be so much, the surrounding storylines of this game, of James Franklin again trying to win the big one, and all that has been wrapped into this offseason of Penn State bringing all these players back. Now, again, remember, season ain't over if they lose it. So there's a long way to go here. And as Ryan Day proved last year, you can lose the game you can't afford to lose and still win a national championship and redeem yourself at the end. College football is different now. But again, the quarterback and the offense is working so much better now for Oregon than what I've seen in these first few tune-ups out of Penn State. I'll take the points in Oregon.
I'm gladly going to disagree with you, Ralph.
All right.
I'm going with the home team. I saw James Franklin talking about this will be like a whiteout environment like they've never had before. And I don't doubt that because it's such a big opponent coming in. And I think they are jonesing for this to have it. 2 big factors, which I like. This is the game I'm most excited about that we've had this season. Dante Moore is playing at a high level. They have not seen anything close to the talent they're going to see on defense at Penn State. Penn State's got some big time D linemen. And I think we all think Jim Knowles is a terrific defensive coordinator. He knows Will Stein pretty well. I mean, obviously faced him twice last year when he was at Ohio State. I think this is the game where we talk about Denai Dennis Sutton more. We talk about Zane Durant. We talk about the guys they have in the front 7. I just don't think, again, I think Oregon's really good. I think they're a top 10 team. This is the game where I'm like, man, I think this is a way different group they're seeing than what they just saw, from the Beavers or what they saw in it from anybody else. I mean, or Oklahoma State. I think Penn State's got the same caliber of guys Ohio State did last year. And I think that, they moved the ball really well against Oregon last year in the Big Ten title game. Those backs got going. I think the receiver group they have is much better than it was last year. They don't have Tyler Warren, but I think the balance of having other weapons outside who can make contested catches, the offensive line's experienced. I don't think this is going to be as big of a point total as what you had in the Big Ten title game, but I think they're going to give Oregon some problems. Again, I could, maybe they'll blow out Penn State just like they've blown everybody else out. I don't think it's going to happen because I just think that between Jim Knowles and the personnel he has to work with, and it's a crazy environment that they're getting into, this is a big test for Dante Moore. I think to me, he is the player to watch this weekend. I'm not saying he's not deserving of all the hype. I know he's really talented, but this is a huge game. To me, this is, like I said, this is must-see TV.
I've been listening to this to try to help make my own decision. Like I'm that torn. So I'm listening to you guys, make your respective cases. You know what? I feel bad for James Franklin. Oregon's 6th, not 5th, which means if he beats them, it still doesn't count toward his,
it should
awful. What is it? 1-15 against top 5 teams. He can't double it by beating them.
The record against top 20s and top 10s isn't great either. So it will help bolster
the top
that.
10
It's 4-20 against top 10.
Yeah, there you go.
Which is why I think I got to pick Oregon. I just feel like the definition of insanity is thinking this one's going to be different, right? And I did think coming into the season, this would be different, and maybe it will be. But these are two teams that one of them, Penn State, has not, and I know hard to gauge against that competition, but their offense in particular has not looked as good as I thought it would. And Oregon has looked much better than I thought it would. I do fully acknowledge the whiteout. It's tough, though. This is a long time ago, I'm going to date myself, cover. I don't even think they called it a whiteout yet, but it was a prime time, I think they were wearing white game at Penn State, where Ohio State went in and thumped them. And the quarterback that day was Todd Beckman, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Did Todd Beckman quarterback them in a national title game?
No, that was Craig Krenzel.
Craig Krenzel.
Well, no. The one where they played LSU, because it was that season.
Oh, no.
That was Troy Smith when they played Florida.
No.
But the next year.
When LSU the next year.
And Troy was gone. And who was the quarterback of that team? It might have been Todd Beckman.
Who was your friends too?
I know that the quarterback on the other side that day was Anthony Morelli. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this game. I'll take Oregon.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say here, I do find myself compelled by storyline here, which is not the best way to pick a game, right? That's not the way to forecast or to analyze a game from an X's and O's standpoint. But I do wonder if, again, the path here for Penn State redemption doesn't look a little like Ohio State's path, and they lose this one, but, win some games later on. I fully expect this game to be very, very close. As you said, I think I'm very much interested in how Oregon protects Dante Moore, right? That's the one. I know they've got some transfers there, and they feel like they're feeling really good about that line being rebuilt. But as you said, Bruce, it is such a different animal that the Ducks are going to be looking at when it comes to pass protection. And I think no matter what happens, it's going to be really close and a really fun game. And one way or the other, we're going to be talking about James Franklin on Sunday.
In 2007, according to Wikipedia, Todd Beckman passed for 2,375 yards and 25 touchdowns, so named first team All Big Ten and leading the Buckeyes to the BCS National Championship game. The next year, he lost his job to Terrell Pryor.
I literally have no recollection of that. like that season was so crazy. I have no recollection of that.
And they just kind of, snuck in the back door there. It's hard to believe that this is the third game we're going to mention here. Alabama at Georgia, right? I mean, that has become a blockbuster game, whether during the season or in the SEC championship game. Almost every year, the Dogs are at home and they are a 3-point favorite, which tells me Vegas mostly considers this an even matchup. Which the pollsters wouldn't necessarily. Again, I like how Vegas is diverging from the polls here a little bit, because Georgia's the number 5 team and Alabama is the number 17 team. But it's only a 3-point spread. Bruce, what do you got?
To me, the most interesting part of this is going to be Ty Simpson's playing fantastic in the last couple of weeks. He's been about as hot as any quarterback, probably this side of Mendoza. And we know last year, Ryan Williams went off against Georgia. I think that's the challenge for Georgia. Can their DBs cover Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard? And you're going to get Jam Miller back. You're getting Alabama's also getting Tim Keegan back, their best D lineman. I think he was really missed in the middle of that. I think for people who've written off Alabama, just be careful of that. Now, they had some tricks up their sleeve for Georgia last year in the beginning, and I think that took Georgia and Kirby Smart a while to adjust. They did in the second half. I'm interested to see that. The part that makes me go, ugh, I think Alabama will hang there, but Georgia hasn't lost a game at night there since I worked at ESPN. I think it was like 2009. That's a long, long time to be just bullying opponents in there. And ultimately, I think this will be a good back and forth game. But I liked what I saw from Gunnar Stockton. I'm going to go with my gut here and say the home team at night is going to win this game, which is pretty much what I did in the Penn State game. Ralph, do you disagree with me for a third time?
I think so. I think I'm going to grab the points here. I worry about the way Georgia had issues with Tennessee's passing game. If Alabama can take advantage of that. Now, Georgia figured it out against Tennessee at some point, turned the water off for the most part, other than one long one in the second half. The other thing, the thing that worries me about this pick is Alabama's defense, generally speaking, has over the last year and change with Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack down there, has been pretty tough against quarterbacks who just sort of hang in the pocket. And Gunnar Stockton is not that guy. Now, is he like Johnny Manziel type scrambler? No, he is not that. But he definitely includes that element to his game. And Georgia tends to be a little bit more standard when you think of what they want to do offensively. And with Alabama getting a little healthier on the defensive line, I think that helps. I don't know. I'm going to go with Bama. I'm going to go with the points. I feel like,
Are you hedging your bet here? You're saying Bama, but you're picking Georgia to win the game?
It's only a 3-point game. So I think if Alabama covers it, it's going to be hard for them to not win, right? With that few points in there. So yeah, I guess I'll just take Alabama. I'm just going to go against you, take Alabama to win a really close game. Yeah. Amazingly, yes. I'm picking the two road teams in the two biggest games of the year. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yes. From the Four Seasons in Happy Valley, probably expensing milkshakes or whatever while this is going on.
You can't get a room in. Surely you didn't get a room in State College.
I'm luckily enough, I have a friend who lives in the area, and I will be staying in there.
Saving the Athletic a lot of money between the staying with your brother in Columbus.
I saw the beginning of this episode.
These are terrible picks too. I just picked the two road teams at night.
You did.
In the two biggest games. Like those teams never win these games.
At least are smart.
All right. This is another one I'm torn on, but here's where this is going to be a familiar. So I went with the familiar James Franklin loses to the good team. Now I'm going to go with the familiar Kirby Smart in a game that he's favored will manage to play the nobody believed in us card because of the way they played against Tennessee, right? Tennessee, everybody thought Alabama was coming here and tear us apart, I'll take Georgia, but not like, they're not going to embarrass Alabama. I think it could be another close down to the wire game like last year. And so they won't freak out quite as much about Kalen DeBoer as maybe they would have. But yeah. And also I can't take both. Maybe I'll get them wrong and I should have flipped it, but I can't take both road teams in those big games. All right. One more before we get to our upset picks. Big one in the Big 12, defending champion Arizona State hosting undefeated TCU. And the Sun Devils are 2.5-point favorites. Ralph, who you got?
I think I'm going to go with TCU here. I've just been really impressed. They're super explosive. Josh Hoover's been on point. Maybe he's the best quarterback in the Big 12 and not Sam Leavitt, though Sam Leavitt's pretty good too. I would say Hoover's played better. The two receivers, Dwyer and McAllister, have been really explosive for the Horned Frogs. So, it's the Big 12. It's going to be a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, something weird will happen. I will yet again take the road team. Just horrible, horrible decisions by me. I will yet again take the road team in a big game, getting a few points.
All right, I'm going to piggyback off of Ralph, and I'm going to agree with him. I'm in studio for that game. We have that game on Fox. I'm excited about it. Josh Hoover's played terrific. I would argue that Rocco Beck's played really well. I feel like, Jalen Daniels played really well. I feel like Josh Hoover, though, in part because of the weapons that they have outside, have really, really stood out. But Sam Levitt bounced back last week. He really struggled a couple of weeks ago when they lost to Mississippi State. I'm going to go with TCU, even though Ralph and I haven't agreed on one yet. We're going to agree on this one. Stu, are we going 3 across?
Yeah, clean sweep. I've not been impressed with ASU this year, even in the game against Baylor the other day. And I think TCU is really good. I think they're explosive. Everything you guys already said, I'll just go ahead and concur. All right, and we're going to each give a upset pick, hopefully a big one, right after this break. What do you say we go bold with our upsets this time, guys? And by the way, didn't you two get your upsets right last week?
Yes. Mine was easy because Maryland blew out Wisconsin, which was actually a surprisingly bigger favorite than I would have thought. But
I'd like to point out I'm 2-0 on my upsets. Vandy beating South Carolina, Memphis beating Arkansas. So gotcha.
All right. So what's you got? What's
all right? Yeah, you've set the bar high.
Okay. So last week we were going against Arkansas. This week we're going with Arkansas. The Razorbacks are at home. Notre Dame comes to town. That is this weekend, right? I haven't gotten that wrong. Notre Dame comes to town with a reeling defense. Even against Purdue, Notre Dame was having a hard time getting stops last week, boys. Now Purdue didn't provide any kind of resistance defensively. So it turned out okay for Notre Dame. They were just able to run the ball all over the Boilermakers. I suspect they'll have a lot of success against this Arkansas defense too, but Woo Pig Sooie gives Sam Pittman a breath of life into his tenure at Arkansas. And I'll take the Razorbacks at home to pull the upset.
Yeah. And if Leonard Moore is probably the best defensive back Notre Dame can't go, that's even more reason to agree with Ralph. I'm going to go with a team that looked really bad last week, and that is West Virginia. They are going to play Utah. They're almost a double-digit underdog. Now, Utah didn't look great last week. They got to go across the country. They're going to go to Morgantown. That is a tough place to play. I know that, the Mountaineers have been wildly unpredictable. They lose to Ohio, they win the backyard brawl, and then they got blown out by Kansas last week. I think they're going to keep up the trend. I think they're going to bounce back this way on the positive side. I think Rich Rod will get them refocused and ready to go. It's a home game. Give me the Mountaineers to pull a big upset.
That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy.
No, I like it.
No, it's crazy.
I mean, I'm not going with it, but at the very least, I would take the Mountaineers to cover.
You wanted bold. I gave you bold.
Right.
I got an even bolder one than both of you.
West Virginia's getting 10, by the way, and Arkansas is getting, I think, 5.5 from Notre Dame, just to be on the record with that as well.
I was hoping one of you would take Washington over Ohio State, just to mix it up a little bit. I don't think any of us are feeling that bold. Ever since that Florida State demolition of Alabama, they've just kind of fallen back off the radar because they're playing nobodies. They're beating them up on them. And I think like the legend of Florida State has grown and grown, but they haven't left the friendly confines of Doak Campbell Stadium yet. And they're going to play one of those classic Friday night road games where crazy things happen at Virginia. Guys, Virginia, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what magic Tony Elliott found, but Virginia is averaging 564 yards a game so far. Chandler Morris has got them rolling. They are a 7-point home dog. And just the fact that it's only 7 points, I think, is kind of notable. So I will take them to knock off the top 10 Noles.
So I love this pick. I hated your pick, Bruce, but I love this because I really do think that, be careful. Be very careful, Florida State, rolling into Charlottesville, because you're right. Something's going on down there Their offense, I feel like I can't believe how much Virginia football I have watched so far this season. But for whatever reason, they have popped up in windows where I've consumed a lot of their games. Even when they lost to North Carolina State never stopped Virginia. They were flying up and down the field and had a couple of like fourth downs where they busted and I think a bad interception at the end of the game. But now I like this one, Stu. I don't know if I would necessarily get on board with it, but I like where your head's at.
I like that Friday night this week is pretty packed, right? You get Virginia,
Friday.
Florida State's at 7, and then TCU, ASU at 9 Eastern.
You didn't stay around for the big Rutgers-Iowa game?
No, I watched the second half of the Rutgers-Iowa game.
Oh,
that was my upset pick last week.
Games. It was Tulsa pulling the upset of Oklahoma State, and it was a fun Friday night.
There was
this one's a little better though.
Yeah, there was 7-8 minutes left, and Rutgers was winning. I thought I was going to get my upset pick, and then it didn't happen.
All right, before we go, and we've had a lot of fun, I want to change the tone here for just a second. We had some really, really sad news in college football today. Sean Clark, who is the offensive line coach at UCF this year and had been the head coach at App State for about 5 years, App State, his alma mater, passed away this morning. It was reported UCF, announced the very sad news on Monday morning. Sean Clark was 50 years old. He was a very well-respected coach in the coaching community. He was a really good offensive line coach. He had a solid tenure as App State's head coach, included about 19 wins in his first couple of seasons. He had a big upset, you might remember, of Texas A&M in, I believe it was the 2021 or 2 season. And he gave a great post-game. Yeah, he gave a great post-game interview where he was just incredibly emotional. We don't know all the details here. A couple of weeks ago, UCF announced that there was a medical emergency, that he was in critical but stable condition. Hadn't really heard much since then. He had not returned to work. And then it was announced this morning that he unexpectedly passed away with his family, his wife around him. So our condolences to Sean Clark's family, his friends, to UCF, to the entire App State community. Very sad day for those folks.
Well said, Bruce. You, I think, had interacted with him quite a bit.
Yeah, he was somebody who, I would direct message with a decent amount. And what Ralph said is true. I think you saw a large outpouring of people, not just in the football community, but even, a lot in the people who covered him. And I totally get that because he was just very sincere. I went back and looked at something that we had kind of went back and forth on. And I just think there was a humanity to him and he understood people's jobs. And I think that, everything I'd always heard from the people who worked for him was just such a devoted family man and really just cared about people. And that came through even in my smaller interactions with him. So heart goes out to everybody who knew him, not only the people who played for him and coached with him, but also, all the people who interacted with him, because it seemed like he just made a lot of people, touched a lot of people. And I think that a lot of people are really sad. And, when I saw that he was only 50, that really stung because, I think you see a picture of him with his son running out of the tunnel with him. And his son, looks like he's probably about 12 or 13 at that point. You just, these jobs, the hours that are involved in it and the commitment to it, heart goes out for everybody there.
Our deepest condolences to his family and to like you guys said, the UCF family, the App State family. We will be back on Thursday, and we answer your mailbag questions on the Thursday episode. So send those to theaudiblepod@gmail.com. And remember to watch us on YouTube at Audible Show, including on Sunday mornings live at 11:30 Eastern and 8:30 Pacific. We'll see you next time.